Hey, First Allen family, Pastor Mary Beth here. Earlier this fall, I got to see the Broadway musical Wicked for the first time. Now, there were lots of people in the audience who had already seen it, but it was a first for me. And when we got to the end of the first act, that's when Elphaba sings the song Defying Gravity. If you know the song, you know it's soaring, it's exhilarating, it lifts the whole audience up in hope and anticipation. And I was right there with them. And then at the end of the song, the lights went down and then they came back up and it was time for intermission. And I felt like, wait, what? Wait, what's next? What's next? I couldn't wait for the next act to begin. So I've had kind of that same feeling in these days as we are looking towards 2022 at First United Methodist Church of Allen. What I know is the last 18 months have been some of the most challenging for all of us, for families, for schools, for teachers, administrators, for governmental leaders, for doctors and nurses and scientists, and for the church. It has been exhausting and at the same time exhilarating to try to figure out how to be the church in times like these. But I have to tell you, I've been inspired by our church staff and by the leadership of this church. They have been flexible and creative and innovative and problem solving and willing to sometimes try new things and willing to fail in order to follow where God is leading us, even though a lot of times we don't know where God has been leading us. But what we've also seen in the last 18 months is that even in the times of crisis, even in the times when there have been unexpected detours or changes or rerouting, what we've seen is that God has continued to be faithful and God has provided what we need in order to be the church that God is calling us to be right here, right now. And I believe that God is leading us into 2022. And I want to invite you to be joining with me and the leadership of this church in praying about what that might look like, what it looks like for us to follow God into 2022. By this weekend, you should receive in your mailbox an envelope from your church that will have a letter from me and this bookmark. And it's an invitation to be in prayer about the next act for our church. What does that look like? And what role does each one of us have to play? Because God has a role for us to play in this next act. I want to invite you to be prayerful about God's generosity to you and God's provision for you in these days, and how you would respond to that. Now, a stewardship campaign is not about funding a church's budget. A stewardship campaign is about discerning each one of us the importance of responding to God's generosity to us proportionally out of our own resources, financial resources, resources of time and talent, resources of prayers and service and witness. It is our opportunity to show our gratitude to God and our commitment to Christ. So I want to invite you to join me in praying our campaign prayer. God, what role do you have for me to play in your next act? So when I saw Wicked, I was very aware that there were people around me who'd seen this show lots of times, and they knew exactly what was coming up when we came back for Act 2. And I know that the actors knew what was coming up because they'd been given a script, but I didn't, because I'd never seen the show before. We don't know what the next act looks like for First United Methodist Church of Allen. We haven't been given a script to follow by God. But God does have an important role for each one of us to play. And God is going to provide what we need. Dear friends, I'm praying for you. I hope you're praying for me. Shalom.